Okay, talking about male genital mutilation again. Well, not exactly, to begin with, we're going to talk about intersex genital mutilation. We know that for the past 30 years, the Australian Human Rights Commission has always been against FGM, that's female genital mutilation. Lately, they're talking about intersex genital mutilation and how it can be prevented. That's not the terms they're using, but that's what it amounts to. And just keeping in mind that females are half the population, and that's an FGM concern. IGM is about, 1% of the population or something, and that's a concern, and that should be commended too. But don't forget that males are half the population, 50% of the population, and we matter. We do. We have human rights too. This is from the Star Observer, the Sydney newspaper, a gay newspaper, from the 9th of September, an article by Matthew Wade. Human Rights Commissioner wants to end unnecessary sterilisation of intersex Australians. So we're talking here about the deliberate genitourinary injury to intersex children or young people, children and people under 18. Australia's new Human Rights Commissioner, Ed Santow, has said he wants to end the unnecessary sterilisation of intersex people in the country. Well, that's to be commended. But I just asked the question of Ed Santow, the new Human Rights Commissioner, how many boys have been genitally mutilated in Australia since you've taken up your post? How many? Probably, you've been there a few months now, probably some hundreds if not thousands. During the Victorian Gay and Lesbian Rights Lobby's VGLRL annual general meeting this week, Santow gave his first keynote to the LGBTI community. As part of his address, Santow highlighted the normalising medical interventions performed on intersex infants, children. Yes, wherever that goes after that. Anyway, so it sounds like an argument for genital integrity as a human right. He hasn't used the words genital integrity or genital autonomy, but it sounds very much like he's arguing for the genital integrity rights of intersex children. That's what it sounds like. Remember, keeping in mind there's FGM, MGM and IGM apparently. We look after girls, we prevent them from getting MGM. We're now interested in trying to protect the 1% of the population, the intersex percent of the population, from IGM. But we're going to leave boys, baby boys, to have their cocks cut up, aren't we? In Australia, irreversible medical interventions are performed on intersex people with insufficient medical evidence, which can create lifelong patients and inflict trauma. That's true. Male genital mutilation that's trauma for life as far as I'm concerned. I've got extra holes in my penis from over 60 years ago. By normalising an intersex person's physical appearance or sex, it can also stigmatise difference. This is all to be commended, that they're looking out for the genital autonomy rights, genital integrity rights of intersex children. Here he is speaking. Over the coming year, the Commission intends to work on promoting the rights of intersex people around involuntary or coerced sterilisation, he said. Yes, this is all about informed consent, and it's all about cutting up of the genitals, whether they be male or female or intersex. He goes on, the Commission will evaluate the current approach to medical interventions in Australia and develop a nationally consistent human rights-based approach to decision-making around medical interventions. This does sound a bit like bullshit, really, doesn't it, if you think about it, because, as I said, we protect little girls from MGM. We're now interested in protecting intersex children from IGM, but we don't protect boys from MGM, do we? From male genital mutilation, we don't. We don't. That's a medical intervention. As soon as I was born, I had this genital surgery, this genitourinary injury performed upon my person without my informed consent. And that shocks and disgusts me. I consider it a sexual assault. He goes on, the aim of this will be to end medically unnecessary normalising interventions. When I was genitally mutilated, it was considered medically necessary, and it was considered normalising, so that I would be like the whole abominable herd. The article goes on to talk about gay marriage. An interesting point in there, he says he believes advocates on both sides should remain respectful of each other. I find it hard to be respectful of any Human Rights Commission commissioners when they have behaved so despicably They have behaved so despicably over the decades. Even in the last 5 years or so, Megan Mitchell, the National Children's Commissioner, has not uttered one word in defence of male genital integrity as a human right. She hasn't. She will say nothing about genital integrity rights, nothing against male genital mutilation. She won't. So there has been despicable behaviour of so many human rights commissioners. Boys are treated with less rights than an animal has. It's illegal, according to the RSPCA Australia, to circumcise an animal of any gender, male, female or intersex. So they told me. I emailed them, I asked them a question, and that's what they told me. It is illegal to circumcise an animal. Genital mutilation. Okay. Here's another article on Edward Santow from the Australian Human Rights Commission website. It's a bit warm today. 26th of October 2016. From the Australian Human Rights Commission's own website. It all says pretty much the same thing as the Sydney Star Observer article said. 26th of October, intersex right to human rights. I would say that yes. Notice that Edward Santow and the Human Rights Commission, they've called them intersex rights. No one has dared to call them genital integrity rights. So this article at the Human Rights Commission website is called Intersex Right to Human Rights. They don't say intersex genital integrity rights or human rights. They won't dare say that. Intersex Australians received a message of support today from the Australian Human Rights Commission, marking Intersex Awareness Day, 26th of October 2016. This is a few months ago. Here's Edward Santow speaking again. We reaffirm our commitment to protecting and promoting the human rights of people with intersex variations, said Human Rights Commissioner Edward Santow. So about 1 to 2% of the population at the most probably are intersex. Boys are 50% of the population, girls are around 50%. So we're looking out now for the genital integrity rights of this tiny minority, and that's to be commended. And we're already protecting girls. Girls are protected by law, but we are not protecting boys' genital integrity, and we should be. Yes, he said all that. Intersex Awareness Day highlights the human rights issues faced by intersex people, Commissioner Santow said. This is all very well and good, yes. United Nations treaties, bodies, agencies and experts have raised concerns on a number of occasions regarding the human rights of people with intersex variations. Yes, he's alluding here to, say, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. The National Children's Commissioner, for example, will quote and cite from the Convention on the Rights of the Child, the CRC, when it pleases and suits her, but she will never say anything about genital integrity as a human right. For boys, the sex discrimination commissioners too, they will never utter a word in defence of male genital integrity as a human right. So, in 2015, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Zeid Ra'ad al-Hussein, stated that far too few of us are aware of the specific human rights violations faced by millions of intersex people, including forced sterilisation and other unnecessary and irreversible surgery. This is all to be commended. Intersex people do have human rights. I think they have human rights, and I think those human rights should be defended. But I make the point that 50% of the population, half the fucking population, is male. We have human rights too. We need to be defended as well. Male genital mutilation is irreversible surgery as far as I'm concerned. I've still got holes in my dick from over 60 years ago. This year, to recognise Intersex Awareness Day, a group of United Nations and international human rights experts have called for an urgent end to human rights violations against children and adults with intersex variations. That's all very well, I don't disagree with that. This expert group has called for an urgent end to medically unnecessary surgery. I'll just interrupt there and say that male genital mutilation is medically unnecessary surgery. This expert group has called for an urgent end to medically unnecessary surgery and procedures on intersex children. The group has urged governments to uphold the autonomy of intersex adults and children and their rights to health, to physical and mental integrity, and the right to live free from violence and harmful practices and to be free from torture and ill treatment. Just look at that. We know that Gillian Triggs, the president of the Human Rights Commission, has called FGM gender-based violence. She has not dared to call male genital mutilation gender-based violence. And that's here mentioned to uphold the autonomy of intersex adults. This sounds very like another way of saying the genital integrity rights of intersex adults, but no one dares use that term. Why can't Santow use the term genital integrity? I wonder why. Genital autonomy. Why can't he use that term? The Australian Human Rights Commission endorses these calls, but they don't endorse any calls for MGM, do they, Edward? Some people with intersex variations in Australia have experienced irreversible medical interventions without their full and informed consent. I say ditto for boys. I say my dick was cut up and sliced up. My cock was sliced up. The Human Rights Commission doesn't give a fuck if male children have their cocks cut up. It will protect little girls' pussies, but it won't protect boys' cocks. It now apparently wants to protect intersex rights. That is a good thing. It's a good thing that girls are protected. But the Australian Human Rights Commission will under no circumstance defend a boy's right to his own penis. Edward Santow goes on. Santow or Santow, I'm not sure. In 2013, the Senate Community Affairs References Committee conducted an inquiry into the involuntary or coerced sterilisation of intersex people in Australia. The committee found there is no medical consensus regarding how and when so-called normalising surgery should be conducted. The committee made a number of recommendations that would increase protections for the rights of intersex people. I regard these recommendations as important and necessary. Yes, Edward, but what is your attitude to MGM, to male genital mutilation? Commissioner Santow said he intends to continue the work of the Australian Human Rights Commission in promoting the rights of people with intersex variations. Would that he would promote the rights of male children. It's commendable that he does that for 1% of the population, but what of boys? As I said, 50% of the population, girls, are protected by law, the other 50% of the population. Yes, he goes on. The Commission will evaluate the current approaches to medical interventions in Australia. We will develop a nationally consistent, human rights-based approach to decision-making regarding medical interventions, Commissioner Santow said. That's all a bit of a joke, really, if you were saying that about male genital mutilation. Listen, a nationally consistent, human rights-based approach to decision-making regarding medical interventions. Now, MGM and FGM and IGM, the laws for all these three different genders are not consistent. The laws should, in point of fact, be degenderised. The laws should be degenderised. Now, this is for another page on Edward Santow. Oops, is that a delivery truck? Sorry, a truck just turned around in our driveway. Sorry, no one ever comes here usually. Now back to this Human Rights Commission page on Mr. Edward Santow. He commenced his 5-year term in August 2016. That's just a mere few months ago. So in this past 5 months, how many male genital mutilations have gone on in Australia? Hundreds to thousands, possibly. He leads the Commission's work on the optional protocol to the Convention Against Torture. If you watch genital mutilations of boys on YouTube, it looks like torture to me. It looks like torture of a baby boy, including bondage. It looks like sexual torture. It looks like sexual abuse of a child. As I said, Gillian Triggs cites the UN and refers to FGM as gender-based violence. What does Mr. Edward Santow say about MGM? He's been given some sort of award, but so do lots of Human Rights Commission people. They give each other awards, and they're always receiving awards. They become Dame so-and-so, it'll be Dame Elizabeth Broderick, Dame Prue Goward, Dame Megan Mitchell. It goes on and on. There's Dame Quentin Bryce, Dame Roma Mitchell, but you'll find that none of these people in the whole history of the organisation will speak up for genital integrity as a human right. I say that the HRC, if they're anti-GEM and now they're anti-IGM, why are they not anti-MGM? It's weird. Now, according to what a little research I've done on Mr. Edward Santow on the internet, he's Jewish apparently, and he recently had a baby boy. So can I ask this, is it polite to ask this question? Was that child protected from male genital mutilation? It cannot be presumed that the child was not subject to male genital mutilation. We know that there was a Jewish health minister, in what was the name? Gilad. There was a health minister in the Gilad government. Her name was Nicola Roxon, and she came from a Jewish background, but she was an atheist apparently. But she maintained, she always argued that FGM was a violation of women's rights, female rights. But Nicola Roxon argued, and she came from a Jewish background but was an atheist. Nevertheless, this is just to describe the muddled thinking of some people. Nicola Roxon claimed that male genital mutilation had cultural benefits, religious benefits, and supposed medical benefits. She claimed all that. So I can't know for sure what Mr. Edward Santow's attitude to male genital mutilation is. He might make it clear since he is a Human Rights Commissioner, but then we usually remain hush-hush at the Human Rights Commission about male genital mutilation. We're usually blind, deaf, and we say nothing about male genital mutilation at the Australian Human Rights Commission. I think it's the torture of a baby boy. If you do a Google search and type in Edward Santow or Edward Santow circumcision, the Google search will come up with lots of things, but it will have a line through circumcision. So ostensibly, Mr. Edward Santow has thus far said nothing about genital integrity as a human right for male children. I suspect he's not going to. It would be nice if some people just one person at the Human Rights Commission would dare to even just talk about genital integrity as a human right for boys, and that male genital mutilation might be a human rights violation. It would be great if someone would dare to just say those few words. See you then.